Donuts. Why do I talk to you about things like donuts? Why do I make a video and a recipe about making 86 donuts and 86 holes? Why do I tell you it only costs $3 to make 86 donuts and 86 holes? I tend to beat dead horses now and then. Some of you have agonized through some of my dead horse beating. I don't get too many complaints about it. Occasionally, I've gotten a couple lately. But I want to talk a little bit more about the donuts. Let me say first what I experienced, and then I'll tell you why. If you don't want to hear what I experienced, then fast forward the video a little and just find out why. If you don't want to hear either one of those, just click it off. But at any rate, I had been wanting to make donuts with one of my friend's kids through the whole summer, and it didn't happen. I just didn't do it. And so last night was the last night before school was going to start. And I had been wanting and wanting and wanting to work on the donuts. And I had a real high energy day. I had gotten a lot accomplished yesterday and felt really good. And I thought, I'm going to go in the kitchen and see how long it takes to mix up the donut, a little batch of donut dough. I had broken the recipe down to a very, very small quantity, and I doubled the smallest quantity. Listed it on a recent previous video. I'll grab that in a minute. But it was like 2 tablespoons of sugar and 2 tablespoons of butter or shortening. So I doubled that and did like a quarter cup of shortening, quarter cup of sugar. It was a half a cup of warm milk in the lowest recipe, so it was a cup of warm milk. So quarter cup of sugar, quarter cup of shortening, cup of warm milk. I think it was a half a teaspoon of salt, rounded maybe. I'm going to forget what was in it. A little bit of lemon, and I think a rounded half teaspoon of yeast. Anyways, there was very small quantities, and I mixed it up. It took like about, took like about 5 minutes to mix up the dough. And then I thought, well, if I have enough energy, I'm going to hop in the car and run over to my girlfriend's house. So I gathered all the supplies that I would need together. I've got a drinking glass to cut the donuts with, and couldn't find my rolling pin. I was upset about that. And threw all this stuff in a bag, grabbed a bottle of oil and a little saucepan about yay big around, because we were only going to do just 8 or 10 donuts total. So I showed up at her house and asked if I could stay for a few minutes, and they were all in the kitchen, and her 9-year-old daughter took the donut dough. I didn't tell her what we were doing. Just asked the dad to turn the oil on to heat on the stove. And we patted down the dough and took these glasses, a drinking glass, like a 12-ounce drinking glass, and cut the dough with that. And then since I didn't have my donut cutter as far packed away in a box someplace, I have 2 of them someplace, then we just poked the hole in the middle of the donut, kind of stretched it out a little bit. But what I learned from doing this donut recipe, haven't done it since I did it with one of my nephews probably 23 years ago, 24 years ago, 22 years ago. And what I learned is that I probably should not have grabbed the bread flour. It was the handiest flour close by. I would have had to look a little harder for a bag of all-purpose flour. So I just grabbed the bread flour, and for raised glazed donuts, that probably was not a good idea. They came out more like cake donuts. They were still edible. And the other thing I learned was that I had my oil too hot both times. I saved part of the dough and set it aside and cooked those when I got home. They must have been edible because they're not here this morning. But I had the oil too hot. So those 2 things I learned was I probably shouldn't have used all-purpose flour, because they were not anything like the raised glazed donuts I had made years ago. Not that I recall. They were more like a donut you get from a cider mill, a cake donut. They call them cake donuts. But I'm making this way too long. I'm sorry. I'm over 4 minutes. So probably bread flour isn't the best thing to use, and the donut should it should sizzle when it hits the oil, but it should not sizzle wildly. You know how sometimes you throw French fries in the oil and they go psh and make all this noise and they bubble wildly. It shouldn't bubble wildly. It should bubble and sizzle, but gently. And it should take a few minutes to turn them golden brown, and you can flip them a couple of times when you make them. But the reason, now back to the reason that I beat this dead horse over and over again is because every single thing that you put into storage, and I'm probably going to bore some of you to death that have heard me say this too many times, but every single thing that you put into storage, like my husband wanted to know why we had all this salt on the shelves. Well, it's because, we start making donuts and start making muffins and all that kind of thing on a regular basis. It takes quite a lot of salt. You go through it pretty quickly. So if it's 40 cents a container, I'd rather have too many than not enough. The reason that I beat this dead horse is because if you have the ingredients on hand, you're going to feel more secure. If you practice enough, if you've made donuts, if you've made the French bread, if you've made whatever it is, if you've done the canning, if you've done the gardening, if you've done any of those things and more, anything that's a skill that you're not 100% sure of, you maybe think you can do it, you have some level of confidence that you can do it, but you're not 100% sure. If you do it a few times, if you make the donuts, please be really, really careful. It's so easy to get burned with the oil. I let a couple of drops of oil splash on my fingers, and luckily the burn went away quickly, but it could really, really be ugly if you tip the saucepan or whatever you're using to fry it in over, you really, really have a problem. So you've got to be like so careful, especially with kids. I was so thankful that none of the oil splashed on her daughter. But if you go through these steps a few times, and you know that you can make bread, and you know that you can make donuts, and you know that you can make maybe crackers, they're not the easiest things to make. But if you've done it before, and you know that you can do it, and you know that you can produce bread day after day if you need to, even if you can't make whole wheat bread, if you can make French bread, which is impossible to kill, impossible to mess it up, screw it up, it's going to give you a higher level of confidence. 7 minutes and 10 seconds, I'm going to quit. Try not to beat this dead horse again. Thanks. God bless your efforts to prepare. Make a list and check it twice so you can eat more than just beans and just rice. Bye.